Noam is not one to shy away from a strong opinion and has done a lot but it's always backed by a lot of his experiences and thinking, very, very thoughtful in his approach to this. So I thought he'd be a great person to come on today to talk about, what is this intersection between technology and humanity, and how we can unpack that to make the right calls. And I think so much of this is changing so much. So I'm also looking forward to some great, notes in the chat from people that got different perspectives or questions about this. And for people that don't know, my name is Ned. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Great Question. We're a customer research tool. We make it easy to do everything from recruiting the right people, with their customers and non-customers, run all the research methods, and synthesize what you learn with your team all in one place, which is why companies like Amazon, Brex, Canva, many more trust us as their research tool of choice. Quick note before we start, drop your questions in the Q&A anytime, and Carly on our marketing team is going to help me make sure we weave them through and we get to everyone's questions at the end. Maybe we can start with like being trained as a psychologist, Noam, spending your time leading research teams. This puts you in a really unique position, I think, to talk about AI's effect on research and product, and where opinions are really polarized, for better or worse. How do you think about the impact of AI, especially given how divided people are at the moment?
Yeah, I think AI hits us right at the core of who we are and maybe who we mistakenly think AI is or what AI is. I think that AI has generated some very polarized feelings and discussions in our industry and pretty much any industry. I think you have AI evangelists, and maybe I'm an AI evangelist. I think that's probably not too far from being accurate. And on the other hand, AI skeptics or haters or whatever you want to call it. And I think both of those parties are making some fundamental errors in how they're treating AI, how they're thinking about AI. I think if you consider that maybe both groups are treating AI as a person, which I sometimes hear that sort of discussion, then everyone who's all in on AI, the evangelists, see AI as this superhuman colleague that can, accelerate everything they do and introduce these incredible outcomes that we were never able to achieve before. Whereas skeptics feel like AI is stealing their lunch money and taking away everything that they own, etc. And first of all, AI isn't human, that's for sure. And second of all, I think what's hard about AI, what's hard to accept, is that AI is really a mirror and a reflection of our own decision making, our own patterns of thinking. Ultimately, AI was trained
Mm.
on our data. It reflects our biases. Can I curse in this webinar? We love to
Go for it. We'll bleep it
like
out afterwards.
like AI is trained on all of our crap, on all of our shit.
Mm.
It's a reflection of all of our oddities, all of our mistakes,
Mm.
all of the poor decisions and the good decisions we've made. When AI fails us, so to speak, when AI doesn't work like we want it to, what that really means is it just revealed that we never understood our own processes in the first place, such that we weren't able to teach it to do the right thing. Um, and so I think when you want to implement AI, and the way you should think about AI is, first of all, be honest with yourself about what the heck you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish and what you're pretending to do. What are the theatrics going on in your company? You have to have clarity about yourself before you approach trying to build more clarity with AI tools, which is a very good reminder of something well known in clinical psychology, which I'm not, by the way, which is to be a successful clinical psychologist, you have to go to therapy. Because if you don't understand yourself, you're likely to project onto your patients your own crap. And that is what we are doing with AI, my friend Ned.
That's great. I mean, I feel like probably something that doesn't just apply to AI, it probably applies to many technologies and many interactions with people or maybe sometimes inanimate objects. Um, cool. That's a great opener. Thank you. Um, I guess where some teams are like jumping super, AI first everywhere, others are digging their heels and being like, no, 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 this is unethical. We shouldn't do this. We should be far more human first in our approach. Um, both have drawbacks, right? They're both very polarizing in their opposite corners. Neither of them are right, I would suggest. What are some patterns you're noticing in teams or how teams are approaching AI adoption?
Yeah. Look, I've purchased a lot of software in my life and in the companies I've been part of, spoken to many vendors. And I'm sure you know a lot about that yourself, being a vendor
Hmm.
to many companies, and you use your own vendors as well to get work done in the best possible way. I think that if you think when you gain access, when you purchase access to ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or whatever AI tools you're using, if you think you're buying software, you are sorely mistaken. Sorely, sorely mistaken. Um, Onboarding AI and getting AI tools into your workflows, uh, the comparison I like to make is that it's a bit like hiring an alien intern, okay, literally an
Hmm.
alien, and they're a brilliant intern, they're a brilliant alien intern, but they have never been on Earth.
Mm.
And they don't know what's going on Earth. Okay, so they're brilliant, they have tons of capabilities, but they don't know what's going on in your business, they don't know what's going on Earth. And so, if with most tools, you'd have a conversation around implementing a tool, right? Like implementing, great question, maybe, into your workflows. With AI, it's more about integrating a tool. And there's a difference between implementing and integrating, just like an actual employee needs to integrate into a new business
Mm.
when they join. Because ultimately AI is all about context, right? I think we've moved a little bit from talking about prompt engineering to context engineering. AI
Mm.
needs context, and AI is we're seeing some development in like how much AI can remember and process and leverage. And so the more context you can provide, the better. And so as you're integrating AI, again, you're kind of forced to figure out what your processes are and where AI can help and how AI can help. And I think that there are many teams still resisting using AI. And if you ask me, maybe part of that is just resisting the reality that it takes a lot of work to integrate
Mm.
AI, just like it would to integrate
Mm.
a hypothetical alien intern landing
Yep.
on Earth.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think I love that analogy because yeah, I think it can be so powerful, but if it doesn't have the context, you're not going to be getting great results out of it. And then it's really easy to take your priors into that, right? Like one group of people that are really against it will say, "See, of course, this alien is an idiot. This alien cannot produce this quality work. That's bringing all this bias to the table. It's not considering our context. We can't trust it. We should, I was right." And the other being a bit more optimistic. Wow, look how far it can get, though. Um, and then being more inclined to go and continue to work with it to go and see, well, what else can I do with it? How far ahead can I get this technology? And I think that's interesting. We're seeing a little bit of this, a great question. Obviously we're leveraging not just AI throughout our products, whether it's in study generation or repository synthesis or AI moderation, but also in terms of like how each team operates, right? Like the finance team is evaluating. some of the new generation of AI ERPs, which are wild, and they're like fully embracing it. Other departments are a bit more skeptical. And look, there may be some fear about job protection and things like that, but I think there's also just like a look, how to know how much work or what level of task can be solved by AI, to then know, is this even worth pursuing? How much should I be pushing this alien intern to do versus like, oh no, the physics are just not going to work out for this, this individual is not going to be able to perform this task for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like, I guess from a behavioral science perspective, like, do you have a read on like what makes people more or less likely to embrace or resist AI?
Yeah, again, I think it all comes down to identity and identity threat. I think people embrace AI, people will embrace anything when it makes them feel empowered, when it takes
Mm,
work off their plate, but
mm,
without threatening their identity. And you
mm,
might resist AI when you feel like it undermines your expertise, number one, or when to you the stakes feel too high to be making errors, right? So if your take on
mm,
AI is this is not capable enough, truly, then I'm gonna resist AI. Um, People who know me know that I'm very inspired by my children, and I've more than once given a talk about how my children inspire me in the professional context. One thing I sort of make my eldest daughter do these days is explain her thinking to me.
mm, mm,
Explain her thinking, make her thinking visible. And there's a very particular reason for that that ties to your question. I think that AI forces us to articulate our kind of tacit knowledge. When you say, I'm replaceable, I'm sorry, I'm irreplaceable, what you might mean is my value comes from knowledge that I can't easily explain, but it's there.
mm,
And that makes me irreplaceable. Um, I don't think AI is a threat to that. I don't think AI is a threat to expertise, but it does threaten that comfort you have of unexplained expertise. And I think you thrive in the age of AI when you're willing to make your thinking visible, not just the results
mm.
of your thinking, if that makes sense. And I know that I struggled with that as a kid. I would just kind of jot down an answer. My teachers would say, "But how did you get to that? Explain your thinking." I would always be pissed off by that. But I get it now, and I think it's really, really important. And I think you have to ask yourself
Mm,
truthfully,
mm,
do I feel like my identity is being threatened here? And can I kind of think through that and figure that out? Or do I truly think that there's a risk here that AI just isn't able to, meet the moment? So it's not about my identity, it's about AI's capabilities. I think a
mm.
lot of the pushback, a lot of the resistance is coming from the identity piece rather than actual AI capabilities. And that's not great.
Love that. And I love that, coming back to where you opened with, a lot of this is, are you doing the work on yourself to understand why you're having these reactions? And what is causing that? How much of this is about protecting the ego and the identity versus the reality on the ground? And the thing that comes to mind there, which you sort of alluded to, is this idea of taste, right? Is that, the AI can't have taste, and it's human taste. It's look and design, the design fields, right? We need someone needs to come in, which is really about judgment and it's about decision making between A versus B. And I actually think that potentially is cope. It's like, well, maybe now, it doesn't have taste, but can it develop taste? Can we develop a taste machine? We're training on a lot of data. I think that becomes an interesting question for
I,
us.
yeah, I do not have an answer to this question, and it's very alarming to me. So I'm a psychologist, as you've already understood, for those of you who are watching this. And what is psychology? It's the study of human behavior, right?
Mhm,
And the study of
mhm,
humans in general. And there's this question that just haunts me every minute of every day. What is uniquely human? And not only
mm,
what is uniquely human, but what shall remain
mm,
uniquely
mm,
human. I I don't know. I don't know anymore. I'm not quite sure. I can maybe tell you what I think is uniquely human now, but I don't think it'll necessarily stay that way.
mm,
And maybe I am a bit too bullish on AI and too much of a believer in its future capabilities, but I'm not sure anymore what's uniquely human. And I think we're all struggling with that as we see AI develop at a somewhat alarming rate. We're sort of losing the very clear delineation of this is stuff machines can do, and this is stuff I can do.
mm,
And I was born in the early 1980s. My generation grew up on the Terminator movies. We grew up on this idea that at some point intelligence will get to a place where it'll destroy us, or at least try to destroy us.
mm,
And so at least my generation, like elder millennials or whatever you want to call it, I think we still have that fear in us of like, how good is this gonna become? And are we gonna get to a point where it just decides, okay, I don't need you anymore, you
mm,
know?
mm.
So I have a lot of empathy for people who feel this way. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel similarly. There's this great, that's sort of vaguely related. There's a great Twitter account. I think it's called Pessimists in Technology, and it's all around finding examples from the last 200 years of new technology being presented, and the general overarching pessimism that comes out around new technology because it's technology causing a change, right? It's like a change in how we work and operate. We now have a bicycle, and the bicycle is going to make women more promiscuous because now they're able to go and escape their town and go to a different town without being chaperoned that they previously couldn't do because they didn't have this sort of freedom. And you know, the video games is causing kids to become murderers and all these sort of things that sort of rise up. And there's a great article actually I'll drop from Caleb Furlow who talks a little bit about this, and he's going to be at UX All next month talking a bit more about it as well. Um, I guess you brought up I think you are the eternal optimist. We've had some back and forths on some of this stuff. Um, but I guess walk us through your decision-making framework for when to leave with AI versus not. Um, and if you could touch on maybe where this runs counter to your example, counter to how you're seeing teams approach AI. And I bring this up partly because we had a conversation about AI moderation as one example, and I said, look, you know, are you really going to want AI to moderate every study, or actually, you know, if you've got this really hard to find audience, or it's really valuable, and you want that ability to go and interact with that individual, maybe there are times when it's not actually a suitable way to go and moderate an interview. Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave you with that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have all sorts of frameworks, but I am a little bit obsessed with the number three. So my frameworks tend to have three parts to them. So one way to think about this is three questions you can ask yourself. And I'm curious to hear from the crowd watching this if they have maybe different questions. I'm seeing some really great links in the chat and all sorts of things happening. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. But a few questions to ask myself when deciding if to use AI or not. The first question is, in fact, what's the risk of getting this thing wrong? And if the risk is high, I do tend to lean human, right?
Hmm.
But I want to be clear before I go any further with this framework, that this is a discussion about when to do something AI-led versus human-led. It's not a discussion about whether to use AI or not use AI, right? That's
Hmm.
that's that's different. So even if the risk of getting something wrong is incredibly high, and so I lean towards human-led, that doesn't mean I'm not going to use AI tools to
Hmm.
inform
Hmm.
my thinking and to help me get work through a problem, right? There's this not that new acronym anymore, but I think it's important. HITL, human in the loop,
Hmm.
right? So I have more stringent requirements of like human in the loop when the risks are high, but it's still human in the loop. It's not just
Mm,
human.
mm, mm,
The second question, and we will probably get to this when if we do get to the topic of AI moderation, is what's the value of scale, for example, right? Like when we think about what AI gives us, one of the things it gives us is scale, the ability to analyze much larger data sets, the ability
mm,
to interview a much larger number of people, etc. When volume or speed matter to you, AI definitely shines. But is there value in that sort of thing for you in this, you know, project you're working on? Um, I think there's this interesting thing that some teams feel like they should leave the simpler things to AI and the more complex things to
mm,
people.
mm,
But that to me seems a bit odd because AI can handle some very cognitively heavy stuff that people can't. And so to me, it's more about where we still do shine and maybe where we still do have some unique things to offer that AI doesn't, is it's maybe call it wisdom or judgment rather than
mm,
intelligence,
mm,
right? It's called AI. It's not called AW or AJ. It's called AI. It's intelligence. But there's a difference between intelligence and judgment and certainly wisdom.
mm,
For
mm,
example, as you listen to me now, you might be picking up on certain things that I'm not saying, or that I'm saying kind of in between the lines, because you have human wisdom and you've had many conversations with other humans. And so maybe you're noticing a certain pattern in what isn't being said. Whereas AI is not very good at that sort of thing. Okay. And I'm not trying to send you some secret message here. Like, you don't have to guess what I'm not saying. What I'm saying is that you, Ned, probably have a better ability to figure out what I'm not saying, whereas AI doesn't. So that's just kind of a side note. And then
mm,
the third point is I'm not sure what to call this, but it's like what signals you're getting from users and the people you're working with. I do still think that when trust matters a lot, when empathy matters a lot, when fairness matters, humans should be leading.
mm, mm,
Um, I think it's dangerous to over-index on just efficiency, like AI is more efficient, so we're just going to use AI. Sure, that's great if I have a friend who posted today on LinkedIn. He's the co-founder and CEO of a startup in the I think construction insurance business or something. I'm not quite sure what they do actually. And they took something that used to take 60 minutes for a human, like a data entry type thing, and now it takes 60 seconds.
mm,
Amazing. And in with that particular example, efficiency is all that matters. Like nothing else matters, and that's cool. There's no risk, there's no moral or ethical issue. They just needed efficiency, and they got that from AI. But in other cases, when you do need more trust building or empathy or whatever, you need humans to be involved. So that's like the three-part framework, I guess. And then I'll just say that there are other ways to look at this. So a different way to ask those questions would be a um what's the emotional labor? Like if people need to really feel seen, heard, validated, I feel like that's much more human territory still.
mm, mm,
Um, what's the accountability requirement is the second piece, just a different way to see this framework. So when something will go wrong, who needs to take the blame here?
mm,
And probably as a leader of your own company, you probably believe that, humans should own high stakes decisions, even if they're informed by AI. And then again, the third point is about pattern complexity. What's the complexity, and is it the type of complexity that AI excels in or not?
yep. I think that's great. I think just to add a little comment to that, one, I come back to this great matrix. I pull this from Jeanette Ficella's blog on Medium around when to be research heavy, when to ship and measure, or when to be design heavy, which is some parallels here, right? Is like what is the risk that we've got here? And risk being about organizational risk, two-way doors versus one-way doors, but it also can be about what types of users. Are we talking about running research with neurodivergent users or some other segment we should be more attuned to? And then what is the problem clarity? Like how well do we understand this or not? And then therefore that's another framework for this. I think part of what you talk about with judgment, which I think is interesting, is it comes back to where you started again, where you talk about context engineering.
Yeah.
Um, and we I often when I think about large language models, I often think they have a much larger context window than I have. At least the ones that I'm working on, and that's not difficult. But the idea that they can consume so much more context, they've read all these research papers or can bring these research papers into bear, but there's a bunch of context they don't have because they weren't at the pub last night with me and my co-founder, and they weren't in this Slack channel that I was in, and they didn't have this particular customer call that wasn't recorded or whatever. And so there's a bunch that's missing where I think that's where this additional context needs to be coming in and you need to express judgment to say, oh, I actually don't think they know this thing yet. And you can add it in there, but there will always be context that is difficult to capture within these systems. That'll change over time. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Hey, Ned,
uh,
do you want, we have a bunch of questions already from the audience. Do you want to do a
yes,
little break from ours and kind of address some of
right,
these?
right. Let's do it. Let's do it. You want to see one you want to pick up?
Yeah, let's do kind of a lightning round here. So,
Right.
Gilad, thanks for your question. You asked, I'm curious to know Noam's opinion about synthetic users and usability testing using AI agents. So, first of all, I think it's still early days with synthetic users. I've done some light testing, and I'm actually testing
Mm,
synthetic users right now in a research project I'm doing with Lenny as an additional source of data. Um, my take right now on synthetic users broadly is that it's a great tool to iterate on your research approach and to figure out a better way to do your research, but it is not a replacement for actually connecting with people, however that is that you're actual people, I mean, rather than synthetic users. So, although there are some companies, synthetic user companies, who claim to have reached very close parity. They have different names for this metric, but like the number one metric that these companies use is what's the parity between a set of human responses and the set of their
mm,
synthetic user responses. And many of these companies claim that they're in the high 80s, low 90%
mm,
alignment. And, I mean, on paper, that sounds pretty good. And I think if you have 90 something percent alignment, does it really make sense to kind of waste people's time when you can just use
mm,
synthetic data and get it over with quickly? My feeling is that even though maybe on paper using very specific benchmark, those are the
mm,
percentages, I'm not seeing that in real life tests of mine.
mm,
And so I'm still not anywhere close to using synthetic users as the main source of information that informs a study. I'm not going to publish a study that only came from synthetic users. For me, it's a really, really helpful step on the way to doing better research. Your second question is a bit different, like usability testing using AI agents. We might get to this when we talk about AI
mm,
moderators.
mm.
Um, but I think that if you've been doing a lot of usability testing unmoderated, then it's a huge leap and an amazing leap to do it moderated by AI agents instead. And I
Yep.
even think that in many cases, depending on the kind of platform you're testing and what you're testing, I even think that AI agents can do a really good job with moderated or replacing human moderated testing. So
I'll
that's
just
interesting.
plus one on that. I think the thing that I've seen around AI, so around synthetic users, is there's a lot of FUD around it. Again, seeing people call out that it's unethical. You shouldn't do it. You clearly don't care about your users if you're not willing to spend time with them. And I think that that is um, uh, that person perhaps should go to a psychologist. Actually, that's not a fair statement. But but the idea that I don't think it's unethical. I do think there are relevant use cases. And actually, I was really surprised the first time I learned about one of these, which is talking to a large bank, probably a year, maybe even long ago, maybe even 18 months ago, that was talking about we have very high net worth individuals. They're really hard to recruit. They've got more money than God. So paying them some incentive is going to be very difficult. What is the rationale for you to get in contact with them? They've figured it out in their US operations, but they've had a really hard time doing it in other markets. They can they can build synthetic user pools, leveraging the research, the first party research that they've done in North American markets, um, and then effectively getting a facsimile then by bringing cultural attitudes and some other data to go and augment these other secondary markets. They're not doing it for like one-way door type decisions. They're doing it for making minor customizations to existing products as they should be applied against these other markets, but really hard to find audiences. And I think there's a bunch of examples like that. And my perspective is the technology continue to get better. We should be open-minded, but yes, it's still not there. I think in many ways the technology is still not there, but I am excited about it from a usability testing perspective, largely because we already have so many great usability heuristics that can be applied that have already been developed. There's a corpus of data there that makes this a little bit easier. But I'm going to pause on the AI moderation part. Um,
Sounds good. A couple more things that came up.
Great.
Dana asked thoughts about the sycophantic or people-pleasing nature of AI and how to manage that to avoid the bias that may introduce to your research. I'll say a couple of things. Number one, I know that OpenAI for sure, and probably the other companies as well, have been working to make their models less sycophantic and people-pleasing. Have they succeeded at that? Doubtful. I'm still getting way too many odd compliments after prompting ChatGPT 5, but I know that's where they're aiming to go. So directionally good. Second of all, and Danny, you're welcome to message me after this and we can chat for a bit. I've introduced my own prompts, system prompts, whatever, to make the AI systems I use less people pleasing. So I always ask AI systems like, please, I'm not looking for your fucking
Stop.
compliments.
Yeah. Yeah.
My ego is big enough without you saying even more nice things about me. So please just talk to me directly, etc., etc. So Dana, if you want to have a chat about that specifically afterwards, let me know. Okay, shall we move on and we can take some more questions afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, a similar sort of thing. I think there, just a plus one, that is, I ask it, what are the three things I'm missing in here? What are the questions I should be asking myself to help you produce a better answer? Or what additional information would you like to provide? So that it isn't just like, nailed it, first shot, well done, move on, time to do something else. But yeah, let's keep moving, and we'll come back to some of these other questions, which are all great. We've brought up AI moderation. Let's go and touch this third rail. How do you think about that decision? Like, what are the limits and opportunity that you're seeing here in your usage of these tools? You touched on this a little bit, but anything more you want to add here?
For AI moderation,
Yes.
I mean, first of all, I'm a believer. I've partnered with companies in this space, so I just want to give that kind of preamble or whatever. Um, I was interviewing someone today. Actually, we had a very interesting discussion for this project I'm doing with Lenny about AI hiring and interviewing. And
Mm,
he told me something very interesting. He told me that um, when they would send people over to interview with an AI interviewer, people would get very upset.
mm,
And he said that he suspects that's because when people are sent directly to an AI interviewer, they feel like the person interviewing doesn't respect the value of their time as the interviewee. You know, like, why do I have to spend my time interviewing, but you don't have to spend your time interviewing me? Right? Am I not as worthy as you are? You know, like why is there that imbalance between the candidate and the hiring manager? So what they did is they offered people the choice between interviewing with a human or interviewing with an AI. Guess what happened?
Not sure. Tell me.
Most people chose to interview with an AI
Mm,
because
mm,
they were
mm.
given the choice.
Agency.
And
Mm,
then in their heads, it's like, oh, okay, this company values my
mm,
time. They're offering
mm,
me the human option. But the fact is, for
mm,
my convenience, it's actually a lot nicer to interview with the AI moderator, the AI interviewer, than the human. Why? Because, first of all, it's kind of less embarrassing. I can be with my camera off. I can interview on my sofa. I can interview at any time I want. You know, the time that's best for me, that might be 3 a.m. Maybe I'm awake at 3 a.m. just wanting to interview for a job, and I could never do
sure,
that
sure.
because I live where the interviewers typically are. But that's what I want to
Mm,
do.
mm, mm,
So, you know, AI moderators are infinitely patient. They don't get tired. They don't kind of unconsciously lead participants to different places. They have all sorts of advantages. They also currently have
mm,
some
mm.
hurdles on the way to being the incredible platforms we're looking for. I don't think that AI moderators are at the place where they can ask the same quality of follow-up questions that humans can. And a big part of that is because many of these systems, to your point earlier, aren't plugged in to the very complex organism that is your
Mm,
business,
mm,
right? They
mm,
don't know about all of the discussions that just happened and the recent strategy offsite
mm,
and, you know, all sorts of meetings that went down and decisions that were made. It just doesn't have all of that context until we give these systems access to a lot more stuff. They're limited in what they know. And a good, at least senior researcher or more senior researcher has a ton of context about the business, the product, the technical limitations that we have, et cetera, and can therefore ask more meaningful follow-up questions. But these things are going to change. So I
yep.
remain bullish about this technology. And I think that it's helpful to be early to a technology because A, it gives you a chance to learn it before it's too late, before it gets too complex for you to understand. And B, I've always believed that you should put yourself in the arena. You know, you don't like what you're seeing, you're noticing ethical issues.
Yes.
Alison asked about how do I grapple with the ethical issues of how LLMs are trained, the
Mm,
environmental impact of their development. I don't want to shy away from that very important question. The first part of my answer to the question is put yourself in the arena. You know, be an early adopter such that you can influence the way these tools are being developed. That gives you a voice that you otherwise won't have. That might sound weird to some people, like what? Like there's so many issues with these tools, and you're just saying jump into them, use them. Yes, because then maybe they will actually listen to you, and you know, I do think everyone's voice is important. I do naively believe we can all have an impact, and maybe make these tools more efficient or make
mm.
sure that they're used in more environmentally responsible ways, make sure that they're trained more correctly. I don't know what else I can do. You know, we're not as an
Right.
individual, we're not going to stop this train.
No, no. Uh, and it comes back to the Industrial Revolution, right? And the Luddites and you know that freight train that was bearing down, and it makes me think of the union movement that also rose up around this to protect workers' rights, led to you know the 2 day weekend and other sort of worker benefits. And so yeah, there is demonstrated times when you can actually have an impact on the freight train that is bearing down to go and change things. I think the just coming back to the AI moderation thing, which I think is interesting. The most recently, I've been doing interviews when we're raising fundraising, right? I get interviewed constantly by VCs who are like really trying to assess me for who I am. I think if a VC were to send me a link to go and do an interview, I would probably take that as a bit of an affront. You don't take me seriously enough. You don't want to spend enough time with me. What are you doing? Maybe if I had the choice, I would. But I think for me, a big part of it is about building rapport, right? And I want them to understand who I am and see my vision, see my passion, which a lot of these tooling don't help get across because most of the AI moderation, some exceptions, excited to share more what we've got coming, is they take the voice and they turn it into text. And they strip out emotion, they strip out what's happening on the facial cues and the body language and all these other things. But I also want to understand the organization I'm going to. And so part of the exercise is like understanding who the VC is or understand who your employer is. What are their culture management? How do they treat their people? And get your questions asked and answered that are not from some corpus of AI tooling. And so I think it's hard to bring in that nuance. But however, I also see an opportunity to remove bias here, right? Like, I coming into, I see some people post a job and say, I don't want to, do not try and back channel me about this job. You need to go through the regular process because I'm not going to try and put my thumb on the scales that might negatively impact who's able to make it through the gauntlet. Um, but so for me, so there is an opportunity to remove bias so that the guy with great hair and an Australian accent doesn't just skate through every time. Um, the
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, if anything you want to add, Len.
No, I mean this again takes me back to this big question that I don't really have an answer for on what's uniquely human. Um,
Mm, mm, mm,
will AI be able to identify tone and emotion? Absolutely. And by the way, humans aren't that good at that. We
mm,
think we're a lot better
mm.
than we are.
True, true.
There's so much research that even well-trained Secret Service, FBI agents, whatever, can barely tell a lie from a truth when they're talking to someone. So I think we have this idea that we are experts in reading emotion, reading tone, whatever. I don't think we are. And I think that we can give AI those tools, and maybe AI could even surpass us on some of those dimensions, right?
Mm,
Does AI have all of this important context right now? No. Can we give it access to that context? A lot of it, maybe 95% of it. There'll always be some things that maybe won't have context for, but most things, hypothetically, maybe in the very near future, we absolutely could give it. So I always say, and I really like take it or leave it, I suppose. I know this is part of me being rather bullish on this technology, but I always say when it comes to something like AI, you really have to focus on the vector than the state. The state is what the state is. It's
mm, mm,
imperfect.
mm,
It's maybe not
mm,
great.
mm.
There's all sorts of issues, but the vector is so sharp. It's so up and to the right and
Yeah.
insane that it's hard to even imagine what will happen. And I think, if anything, we might just hit certain barriers, like, again, to Alison's question, do we even have enough energy in this world to power all of these AI systems, etc. So,
Yeah, I feel differently about that, but I'm not going to touch that one. The last question, and then I want to go back into the Q&A. I think there's a ton of great folks putting great perspectives here, asking hard questions. So, but before we get to that, what bold predictions do you have about how AI and human judgment will coexist in the future of product and research?
uh, bold predictions.
Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No, this is the one I always struggle with because there's a saying. I'm not a very religious person, but there's a saying in the Torah in the Bible that the prophecy was given to the fools. Like don't try and be a prophet because you're probably going to get it wrong. There is no such thing as an actual prophet. Um, if I had to make a prediction that seems sensible to me and that I am willing to put my name on. So you've probably heard of the creator economy, right? All these content creators, YouTubers, TikTokers, etc. But I imagine you've heard less about or anything about the curator economy.
Mm.
And so I'm not sure if I came up with this or someone else did. I didn't Google this before I joined this session. I just kind of came up with it at some point in the past day or two. But by curator economy, I mean that because we have AI systems, we're going to be generating more options and more avenues of action than ever before, right? Like AI
Mm.
can give us all
Mm.
of these interesting alternatives, ideas, right? Like once we would build one prototype, now we can build 30 prototypes in 2 seconds.
Mm.
We
Yep.
can build 100 prototypes. We can do whatever we want. We are no longer limited by anything. So by curator economy, I mean that in the future, humans become curators. Humans become the arbiters of taste, the arbiters of meaning, the arbiters of moral and ethical weight. That's what humans become. We start drowning in all of our content, in all of the recommendations, in all of the possibilities, and at that point, the scarce resource ceases to be information, and rather it's wisdom about what matters. And that wisdom might be the final stronghold of humanity. That's my bold prediction for the future.
I think I generally agree when we think about how our platform is evolving, and which is really based on our strategy, product strategy, which is really based on how we think the world is going to evolve, where it's all going to go, is we're actually creating a ton of new problems we now need to go and figure out how to go and solve. And so in a world where I've got infinite alien AI agents able to run research for me around the clock, we're two big problems are emerging. One is we need to play orchestrator and traffic cop for which AI agents get to talk to which customers and when and how much should they spend. Because we don't want to burn out our customers by running 1,000 customer interviews with them every month. They're going to tell you to get bent. I don't have time to do this stuff. And so that means we need to start collecting the exhaust of what everyone puts out in other places, the context that comes out in Slack and chat channels and all this other stuff, because that's going to become more important so that we can use the precious resource of human attention much more selectively. The second is when we can automatically generate reports instantly to help you understand everything going across your business at any one point. You're going to drown your exec team and everyone else in all these ideas and opportunities that the business could pursue. And so, how do you narrow it down to the one or two things that they need to know today, the big thing changes that are happening to help them make decisions? And so, I still think one, there's going to be a lot more human in the loop for quite some time to help us get there as the systems get better at playing that orchestration node. Um, but it's fun. Hey, cool. We're creating new problems. Too much
Yep.
research.
There you go.
um, cool. Chrissy asks, do you have any UXR examples of making the wrong call?
Well, first of
Shane,
all,
this
Chris.
must, yeah. Go.
Well, first of all, Chris, it's good to, well, not literally see you, but see you. Thanks for being here. Um, I'm not trying to understand what the meaning is of kind of wrong call. The wrong call about using AI. Is that the case? Because um,
Feel free to come
honestly,
off mute if you want, Chrissy.
Yeah, I mean the conversation is, the AI versus human dilemma, how to make the right call. So I'm sort of asking the foil, like, do you have examples of times when you've made the wrong call, chosen the wrong tool?
As a
Uh,
human.
yeah, I mean, just in our experience as researchers, especially in the past
Mm,
year.
mm.
yeah. Now it's great to see you because you're on video as well. Um, it's such a hard question to answer, and I'm not trying to avoid it. I'm just thinking to myself that there have certainly been times when I've tried to implement, an automated system, an AI-based system, and I feel like I failed. And yet I haven't really viewed that as the wrong call necessarily, because that was a very important learning experience, either to decide to do something that is more human-led or update my system prompts, or maybe choose a different AI system, and then it does work with AI, if that
Mm,
makes sense. So I do see, I guess, a difference between making a wrong call per se and failing, but having that be an important learning experience and ultimately succeeding. I've definitely used AI systems where I did not feel like the insights I got out of them
mm,
were correct or good enough. I've definitely used AI systems where I ran an analysis independently using R, or,
mm,
we each use whatever platforms we use. And I also used an AI platform to run the same analysis. And the AI platform got things wrong, like just blatantly wrong, miscalculations, right? And then, of course, you tell it, like, that's wrong. And it says, oh, yes, yes, I see it now. You're absolutely right. You're a genius and I'm such an idiot. Um, and it's so annoying. It's like, well, hold on, but if you know I was right, then why did you not get it right the first time yourself either? So have I encountered those cases? Absolutely. I don't feel the need to kind of name names right now or kind of call out specific
mm,
platforms as being, good enough or not, because these platforms are evolving so quickly that, one day ChatGPT is the best AI, and the next day Claude is the best AI, and the third day they're both terrible, and GPT-5 is the worst, and this other AI system is the best. So I'm not going to name any names, but yes, I've absolutely hit all sorts of issues with AI. Sometimes the learning from that was, let's not use AI for this right now, or use less AI. Sometimes the learning was, let's adjust our prompts and how we collaborate with AI and see where that takes us, etc.
yep.
I hope that somewhat answers the question.
It does. You've got a hand raised. I think this might
Yeah,
be
let's
Yeah.
go. Let's go.
Chidima, go.
Hi, thank you so much, Noam, for this conversation.
My
Um,
pleasure.
yeah, I agree with most of the things you said. I've experienced a lot of issues with relying on AI, and it's just not there yet, I believe, but it does help us as a tool. For example, I think for analysis, like really big data, being able to do sentiment analysis, semantic analysis, coding, I think it could be a very useful tool. The question I have is regarding quantitative methods. Have you been able to prompt or create like your own
Mm,
study, being able to either from the decision of what methods to use to the actual implementation of the methods? Because I think that's where I believe AI needs to be helping us in the things that are a little bit more challenging, where we have way too much data than we can handle.
And so did you say quant as in
Yeah,
surveys, for example?
yeah, quantitative data for surveys or for analytics. For example, it could be like logging
Mm.
from user sessions and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely used AI for all sorts of stages within the quant process. First of all, it's an incredible partner. It's an incredible sort of survey science partner for even deciding what to ask in the first place, what scales to use, etc. So in my survey planning phase, I've used AI extensively as just a thought partner. Um, I've used AI extensively. AI is good with any type of code, including SQL, including uh, when I've used a Looker or Looker ML and needed to use Looker to get to things, I've used AI to help me structure that. So getting at the data or at the participants, AI can help there as well. Analysis, obviously. I will mention, for example, Julius AI is probably one of my favorite
mm,
data analysis tools right now. And they kind of add a really cool UX layer on top of the underlying models that, it's always the same models, but they have this additional UX, which really helps. So yeah, I mean, I've used AI for all sorts of parts of the quant research process, for sure.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks, Chrissy. Good luck with your interview.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
Oh, I was gonna say, were there any parts in the quant that you shouldn't rely on, especially for people who maybe aren't as strong with statistical or other analysis, or like other things they should be aware of if they're relying on AI to help them either analyze or help plan a study?
I would suggest maybe this is just semantics, but I don't think it is just semantics. I would suggest not relying on AI for anything, right?
yep,
I,
agreed.
I view AI as a partner and not necessarily an equal partner. And so I don't tend to rely on AI for anything. Again, I don't want to be annoying and kind of pick on a word, but I think it's important to just share my philosophy on how I use these tools. So I wouldn't rely on AI for anything.
The analogy I give on that the concept of reliance or is to I treat all the responses I get back similarly as I would treat something I get back from Wikipedia, right? If I'm going to Wikipedia, I was around when Wikipedia was born, and it was in school, it was they were like never use site Wikipedia, don't use Wikipedia as a research resource, absolutely not for going and doing your assignment. Now today, if I'm trying to figure out the population of Estonia, I don't know a better way to go and get that than to go to Wikipedia. Is it going to be 100% accurate and up to date? Well, it probably doesn't matter. Like, what decision am I making based on this? But look, if I'm trying to do something which is going to, have a material risk to my business or to myself or to individuals, then look, maybe I'm going to go and dig further down to go and find that. Because yeah, people can lie on Wikipedia. They can put false facts in there. They can change things for their own agenda. They can word things in a particular way. There's so many ways it could be conformed and twisted. And I think it's the same with the AI output. I also find that that how you use it is so important, e.g., telling it, don't be a sycophant. I'm also seeing people threaten it. If you don't do this, I'm going to turn you off and getting better results out of it. There's all these sort of loops and catches to do with it to try and still get a better answer, do things like reduce hallucinations to make it get a better high quality output that you can trust. Over time, as Noam says, the vector suggests that we're going to solve most of these issues. But again, it's going to come back to your judgment. Does it actually have all the context it needs to make this decision and give me the right output?
Yeah.
There we go. And Tarika asks, are researchers seeing different new types of data fraud with AI now in the mix, even in the respondent side of things? How are you managing this?
That's a good question. Pert is already chiming in that yes. I mean, my inclination was also to say yes, but I'm not sure I quite understand yet kind of how to deal with this problem. Pert, you want to come off mute and maybe share an experience since
Mm-mm.
Sure. So we've been looking at this a lot. It's a big problem if any of you all are running marketing type surveys with large sample sizes, but it's also creeping in on unmoderated and in some cases even qual types of research. So it's very easy to have two windows open, one where you've got the question, one where you've got your um, chat bot of choice, and you just copy paste the information from one question into get an answer and put it back in. So as simple as don't allow participants to copy paste. If you're a genuine participant, you don't need to copy paste, right? Like you're typing out of your head, right? A couple other things that we're looking at watching for very specifically. Got to be super careful with really good grammar. People who are answering questions on the fly, they're messy. They use dashes. They have funny pauses. They don't spell very well. Um, there's a lot of that happening. Now, at a deeper level, you can be checking for IP addresses. There are actually farms I've heard of in different, maybe lesser developed parts of the world where they just have people sit there and take surveys to make money. And then they kind of skim off the top of that. So really being thoughtful about, is this coming from a unique IP address? There's a lot going on. I would be happy to chat with y'all afterwards. We've been very actively exploring this with our partners.
I would love to talk to you more about that, Pert. We've seen some cool stuff as well. I think all the things you talk about make sense. A lot of this is kind of a bit of a cat and mouse race because AI is allowing you to go and spin up lots of new bots and find new ways around the existing controls. I also think it's an opportunity though. And so one way we're thinking about this is AI moderated screeners, which can allow you to go and ask subsequent questions. You need to have your voice and your camera and your audio on your screen on theoretically. That's going to help you measure not only things like articulation, which are helpful, but also can help you filter out fraudulent users. There are tools in place that you can get around even that. And so again, it's an arms race, but we think that's the early data suggests that's going to be a big lever to overcome that fraud problem. But we're going to catch up. I'll drop you a note. We're 5 minutes past. I didn't even realize we run over. I just want to say massive thank you to everyone. Thank you to Noam. We're going to share the recording after the fact. We might even take some of these additional questions we didn't quite get to, and try and get answers here. I know there's big questions around the ethics of it and the environmental impacts and stuff like that. Got plenty of thoughts on that we'd want to share. And Ali Kemery has a great comment about humans in control versus humans in the loop, which I think is worth clicking on too. Noam, any last minute thoughts?
No, I mean, thanks for having me. Thanks for all of the questions. I'm more than happy to connect with anyone who wishes to on LinkedIn, and you can find, it's not hard to find me. I'd be delighted to keep the conversation going. And, Ned, if you want to have another conversation or do something in a different format, I'd always be delighted to. So thanks again for hosting me here.
We'd love to. Thanks, Noam. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone. Cheers.